Okay, so I'm about to tell the scariest thing that ever happened to me. The thing is, I'm not an English speaker, and even though I manage, I'm not sure about all the technical scuba diving vocabulary. I'll do my best, but please be indulgent. It happened last year, between Christmas and New Year's Eve. I'm from the French Caribbean, so it's not unusual to scuba dive during Christmas holidays. My family and I, 25 female, booked a few dives. They are all really good scuba divers, better than me. They passed a few scuba diving levels that allowed them to participate in a way more technical dives that I'm allowed to do. I enjoy scuba diving as well, and I'm able to do almost every casual dives, but I don't feel safe diving without an instructor yet, even more if it's a dive with decompression stops required. If anyone isn't familiar with scuba diving, here's a quick explanation. You can dive safely until a certain deep before the pressure becomes dangerous. If you dive below that point, which is roughly 20 meters or 65 feet, you have to do decompression stops during your ascent. It means that you have to stop while going back to the surface a certain time to let your body adapt itself to the pressure. If you ride up too quickly, you may catch decompression sickness, which can lead in a worst-case scenario to death. So we decided that I could manage a little private lesson with an instructor first, prior to more exciting dives with my family. So the first day, my family was enjoying a dive on a technical spot that I wasn't feeling up to, while I was alone with my instructor and receiving my old scuba diving reflexes. Everything went okay. We were on a beautiful coral reef. There was many beginners on the boat, and I was by far the more experienced here. So finally, my instructor deciding that he could manage me with another student, which was truly a beginner, and after a small briefing with every safety rules and hand sign, which is the only way to communicate underwater, we began our descent. I quickly retrieved all my old reflexes and was enjoying myself going back and forth to the instructor and the beginner driver during at least 20 minutes. Everything was perfect, besides one thing. It was a windy day, and there was a heavy swell. It's less of a problem underwater than it is for surface swimmer. The only thing that it requires more physical effort to swim, and so my air bottle was emptying a little quicker than usual, which is normal. I signed to my instructor and was running thin of air, and he nodded. It was this level far from being critical. It was at this moment that I saw a young man swimming towards me. It wasn't the instructor, nor its student. I've never seen him before, but he was in full scuba diving gear, and we were the only dive boat on the spot, so I assumed he was with us, and I just didn't pay attention to him on the boat. He was swimming fast towards me, and then signed me that he was out of air. When an air failure happens in scuba diving, there is a very strict procedure. You have to help the person, no questions asked, because every second is vital. If you faint underwater, you drown. On your gear, you have two breathing devices, regulator, octopus, I'm not sure about the English word, a main device and a spare device. So I handed the guy my spare breathing device, which means that we both were breathing on my gear, consuming twice as air as I was consuming alone. I waited till the guy seemed calm down and tried to hand sign him to go see my instructor. He gestured a no and signed me to start our ascent. I understand this is the procedure. I was a little low on air and above the decompression stop level, so the right thing to do was going up to the surface before having an air failure. But I have to tell my instructor first. The guy was very reluctant, and it was strange because it would have taken us like 30 seconds to tell the instructor, and he would have started an ascent with us. During this time, I was panicking as seeing my own air level going down. and I saw that our instructor was staring at us quizzically and swimming towards us. It was at this moment that the guy let go of my spare air device and started swimming away, breathing again in his own device. I was totally lost and started my ascent with my instructor. Once at the surface, because of the tides, I was feeling dizzy and nauseous, so my bizarre encounter wasn't the first thing that I debriefed. It was after I calmed down and the boat driving us towards the beach without the strange guy that I asked my instructor about what happened.
Oh, I don't know. Maybe a guy who lost his groove and needed some time to calm down.
I replied, okay, but why did he told me that he was out of air? My instructor told me that I probably misunderstood his hand signing, that he was probably not telling me he was having an air failure because he left breathing in his own device. I'm sure I saw him do the air failure sign, but okay. The next day, I joined my family during my dive. The instructor was different. It was a girl this time, Charlie. I've had time to think about that guy and I was worried about him, so I told everything that happened to Charlie and asked her if she knew the guy and if he was okay, because I then saw him going back to the surface. She asked me to describe him, which I did, and she told me,
"Oh, that's Marvin. No, don't worry about him. He's preparing himself to become a scuba diving instructor. Every time he has a day off from the restaurant he's working in, he asks us to drive him in the coral reef in the morning and to pick him in the afternoon. I ate at his restaurant this noon and saw him. Don't worry."
I was relieved and told myself that it was just a comprehension issue with Marvin. The rest of the week went without any incident. I was doing more and more technical dives, and everything went very smoothly. Charlie was a wonderful instructor. Never saw Marvin again, that being said, until the last dive. It was on New Year's Eve. We planned the best dive on that day. It was on a shipwreck, and I felt trained enough to try it without any instructor, just my family and I. It was Charlie's day off. It was fairly deep for a beginner like me, 30 meters at its down point, around 98 feet. My first day, male instructor was there and told us that he would be exploring the shipwreck too, so we would cross him and he would help me if he saw that I needed it. It was very comforting to know, and my family felt comforted too when I told them that. So we began our descent and I started swimming around the shipwreck. We crossed our old instructor twice, but every time I signed him that everything was okay. It was at that moment that I saw Marvin swimming towards me. At this moment, I was about 5 to 10 meters above my down point, still staying under my decompression stop level. I was a little surprised, and even more surprised when he signed me again that he was out of air. I was mistrustful, but if there were any chance that it would be true, I couldn't not help him. So I handed him a spare breather. This time, I've had many air left, so it wasn't a problem. He took it, started breathing in it, and took my arm. I reached to see its air level instruments, but he prevented me from seeing it. Then, he signed me to start an ascent with him. I immediately signed no. I wasn't at my deepest when he reached me, but I have been deeper during this time, and I've had decompression stops to do. I saw that my father saw us, but he quickly looked away, probably not understanding what was going on. I tapped at my driving computer, a device which calculates when and how long to decompress, to signify it to him. He shrugged, smiled, and started swimming up, still holding me. I was paralyzed for a few seconds, and the thing that helped me react was that my driving computer was telling me to stop and decompress now. I then understood that I was in danger, and if I let him do what he wanted, I would die from the bends. I then started screaming, only to remember that no noise can be heard underwater. I started wriggling frantically as I saw my father and sisters way below me, my diving computer alerting me more and more intensely. At that moment, my father saw us, and he reacted. He swam very quickly towards me, and I managed to hit the guy as my dad grabbed my ankle and suddenly dragged me deeper. The guy then quickly swam away. Next day, on New Year, we went to the scuba diving club because my little sisters had a diploma to collect, and we saw Charlie. Still shocked, I told her what happened with Marvin, and then she stiffed. She told me that Marvin was at the restaurant yesterday for the New Year's Eve, and he didn't went scuba diving, which means that this guy wasn't Marvin. Until this day, I still don't know who he is, and what he wanted, and why he tried to kill me, maybe twice. So not Marvin. I still don't know if I'm going to scuba dive during the upcoming holidays, but if I do, I'll let you alone with your air failure. I grew up in a small town, the type where people don't really lock their doors. They didn't used to. When I was about 14, female, I got a call to babysit for one of my regulars, who had 3 daughters. It was December, so a lot of Christmas work parties were going on. I arrived and we went over to the usual rules. She mentioned the TV upstairs was out, so once I put the girls to bed, just head down there to watch TV. And so after playing with the girls for a while, I sent them off to bed and headed towards downstairs. I spent a few hours channel surfing. It was about 1:30 a.m. I remember grabbing the phone. I can't remember who I was calling, maybe my mom or my sister, to let them know I would be really late. But I heard the door open upstairs, which sort of surprised me. The mom enjoyed the nights I babysat as she knew I was a night owl who could be there super late like 3 in the morning, provided she held a cab for me. It was a small town, but I live on the other side of it. As I headed upstairs, I heard someone stumble, so I picked up my pace to make sure she was okay, only to find 3 people I had never seen before. There was a clearly drunk woman laying in the doorway and 2 guys. The guys looked as surprised to see me as I was them. I asked them why they were here. The girl had slurred out that they were here for a party. I was confused and asked if they knew Helen, the mother. One of the guys looked me up and down, and I began getting even more uncomfortable at the whole situation. He asked, I was here alone? I remember not wanting to answer because all I could think of was the fact that there were 3 girls sleeping in the house. I decided, instead of answering him, I would simply state there was no party here and that they needed to leave. The girl said that she was here for the party, while the guy who had asked me the question took a step forward. I demanded this time they leave, and we all heard the sound of a phone button being pushed. I had forgotten it was even in my hand, but it seemed to be enough to startle the guy who thought I pushed it on purpose. The guy quickly told the other guy they were leaving and helped the woman up. As soon as they were outside, I slammed the door and locked it. I quickly ran to the front window and watched them. They continued up the block, so it wasn't merely messing up the house numbers for them. The mom returned home 2 hours later and was confused why the door was locked. She was too drunk, so I just told her it made me feel safe. I felt stupid for not telling someone, but they didn't really do anything. To the three drunks that one winter night, let's not meet again. This happened 20 years ago. I was driving back home with my girlfriend at that time. It was Christmas Eve, and my mother's family used to hold a large celebration at my aunt's house in Estacada. This was my girlfriend's first meeting with my extended family, but she got on quite well with them. We spent the majority of the afternoon and evening talking, playing poker, opening presents, and drinking an assortment of adult beverages. My girlfriend had been quite inebriated by the time we had to leave, therefore I'd be driving us home. It was around 11 p.m. or so. I was driving my girlfriend's car along Highway 211. Now, this stretch of road is surrounded by farms and dense patches of forest, and parts of it are unlit. But nothing to fear. I grew up in this area, so I knew this road like the back of my hand. The both of us were just driving and talking away, just two young lovers making the most of our moment together. There is a portion of the highway that descends down an enormous hill before crossing Deep Creek. Surrounding both sides of the road are thick forests. There are no lights. The only thing we could see was the area directly in front of our headlights. I drive down the hill, across the bridge, and uphill through more forest. It's as the highway starts to flatten out that it happens. Something sprints across the road so suddenly that I almost hit whatever it was. I slam on the brakes. I turn to my girlfriend and ask her if she saw it. She confirmed that she had, but she couldn't make out what it was. Maybe it was a coyote, as they are a fairly common sight in this area. But something felt off about it. Whatever it was that ran in front of car disappeared into the woods next to the road. Coyotes don't usually just start out in front of cars. Not like that anyway. So, for some reason, I decided to check it out. I turned the car around and switched on the high beams to better light up the forest in which this thing had vanished in. I stepped out of the car and walked towards the woods. I don't see anything, but now it feels like perhaps I'd made a grave error. My heart is pounding, and the hairs on the back of my neck are standing at full attention. But I still don't see anything unusual in the trees. Suddenly, the car's horn blasts. It's not a beep 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 that you get if you say your driver or passenger wanted you to hurry up and get in the car. No, this was a long blaring beep. I walked back into the car and asked my girlfriend why she leaned on the horn like that. She said nothing. Instead, she pointed to a spot about 50 feet from where I was standing. I looked over in that direction, and that's when I saw it. Surely, this was the thing that ran in front of our car. It was a man. He was completely naked. His skin was covered in dirt and mud, and in one of his hands, he was holding a hatchet. He looked back at us, and then he smiled and waved to us just before turning around and walking back into the forest. Needless to say, we got the hell out of there. Once we were safely driving again, my girlfriend explained what had just happened. While I was trying to look for the man in the area he initially vanished in, he circled back around and came out from another spot in the forest beyond my car headlights. My girlfriend had seen something out of the corner of her eye, and that's when she saw him. Before she honked the horn, he was walking towards me. his hatchet raised as if making to strike me. We called the authorities once we got safely back home, but they never found anybody. Or they did, and just didn't tell us. But the officer we spoke to explained his theory. The man was obviously looking to ambush unsuspecting lone travelers, for Lord only knows what reason. We all agreed that my girlfriend's quick thinking saved my life, as it let my potential killer know that I wasn't alone out there. I moved back into the area recently, so I now drive that highway often. No naked hatchet man sightings yet, but I can tell you that I'm definitely extra vigilant now, especially near Deep Creek.